You're listening to
Your
Mortgage
mic's
Gumbo.
off.
You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio. And I'm your host, Dwayne Stein, the Gulf South Mortgage Authority. And if you want to join the show, 504-260-0995, or you can shoot an email to info@mortgagegumbo.com. Almost 9 years we've been your home show. So if you're new to the show, welcome to the Gumbo Nation. For all our loyal listeners, appreciate you. And someone very excited, I'm excited to have Total Home Authority member joining in studio, somebody y'all very familiar with, Jeff Lestershare with Florida Law and Title, the legend of Law and Title. Is going to be, look at that, Jeff. You even got an audience, your fanfare, man. So is joining us in studio today. So if you've got any questions, law related, business, thinking about opening a business, some law questions, we've got quite a few that we're gonna cover today. Then get those in, send them in to info@mortgagegumbo.com. So Jeff, always good to have you in studio, but let's kind of chat, man. You had saw big week last week, and I'm going to have to deal with it and always share. I kind of keep updates with my son, and I saw you had a life-changing event last week. Huh?
Oh, yeah, man. Dropped off my oldest, my daughter, Ella, at LSU for the first time she's been away like this. So, yeah, it was a very trying, exciting, emotional time.
Yeah. So how do you prep for that, man?
Man, there's no way to prep for that. I mean, the advantage is that we're 45 minutes from home. So, as I was telling you earlier, my wife has been there probably 4 out of the 6 days since we dropped her off. But, yeah, there's
So you'll be getting a house there soon, I'm sure, right?
Man. Well, yeah, I might as well because we're spending that in gas probably.
Yeah.
But there's no way to prepare for sure. I mean, it starts to really resonate with you, and you start to think about – what your parents have gone through, and I'm like, man, like we were saying, we don't probably call our parents enough now that I got one out the house.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy because, and I've shared this and, with the audience a lot. Nobody told me I always thought empty nesters when they leave, right? Like, I only have the one. So, but it started when he started driving. And, they're always gone and stuff like that. So it's a route. So now I'm seeing, as he's gotten older, and now it's in my, I guess, right in front of me now, knowing next year, of course, in his mind, and I could say this because he's sleeping, right? I mean, he still thinks he's going to get drafted right out of high school, go to major league. But I'm like, just in case, bro.
Yep.
Just in case that don't happen, dude, we're going to have sort of a little bit of a backup plan, so to speak, So it's nuts, but is she enjoying it, having fun?
Oh, my God. I mean, she literally texted us saying that she's having the greatest time of her life. And I mean, as a parent, I mean, that's all you can ever hope for, to hear from your kid. And look, we're only 6 days in, so, the classes and the testing, the finals, things like that hasn't started yet, but neither has Saturday night in Tiger Stadium.
Right.
So we know how fun that's going to be for her. So, we're excited for it, and it gives us an opportunity, too, to get to know our kids that are still at the house with us.
Yeah, there you go, right.
Because when they're going through their senior year and going into college, I mean, it absorbs a lot of your time. So we had a night last night with my middle son who is pretty much a, real artistic kid and sticks to himself sort of deal. So, we're trying to reap the benefits on the other end of it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's good stuff. So, our business, let's kind of, Florida Lead, Law and Title. Jeff, kind of tell everybody, I know your greatness, but kind of tell everybody just reintroduce yourself to the Gumbo Nation, man. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into this, and let's kind of go down memory lane a little bit.
I just a small town guy. Grew up in Ponchatoula. Went to Southeastern here after trying to stint at my hand of going off to college and playing soccer. And one snowstorm sent me back, pretty quick.
Nice.
But and 20 inches in October.
Where at, man?
A really small school in York, Nebraska, which is about 35 miles west of Lincoln.
Okay.
But yeah, nothing like we did with my daughter, where it was a day-long event, 2 days actually, preparing her dorm.
Yeah.
My parents dropped me off with a suitcase and a pillow.
Good luck.
And 18 hours away, but that didn't last real long. We had a good season, but snow kind of chased me back.
Mm-hmm.
So. I got into the real estate, so to speak, world, I guess, working for a home builder in undergrad. And so I've been doing this now for almost 24 years in this industry, so to speak. But, met my wife at college. We got married young. I think she was just turned 20. I was 22, something like that. Went off to Loyola for law school. I was the Katrina year, so that's what sort of chased me back over here. But while I was there, I was working for, oddly enough, a Fleur de Lis title. So our company name comes from Fleur de Lis Street in Lakeview, which is where my old boss, Christine Mora, actually grew up and worked. And when she moved off after Katrina, I spent 5 years at another title company out of Baton Rouge with an office in Hammond and Ponchatoula. And then eventually, after 5 years, started my own gig, and that name was available because nobody had come back to town to use it. My old boss, still lives in Dallas, I believe, and so that's why we're Fleur de Lis title. And then opened in 2011. I think in my career, I've done probably approaching 21,000 transactions we've been responsible for, and then we have the whole civil transactional side of the practice as well. So we do a lot of business, formations and lease agreements and trusts and wills and successions and powers of attorney and things like that.
Yeah, and I know we've got quite a bit of questions about that I want to cover today because I know, that's an important part of the business. And, one of the things that you have pioneered that I think is fantastic, and this goes for the folks out there, and it's funny because people always go, man, how do you come up with so much content to discuss on a show? Well, we see it in a daily basis, right? Yep. I mean, so it's easy. Every client's different, but it's always unique. And, so I see these things that happen all the time, and I'm always amazed, and we had it this week, and this is something that you started to pioneer that I think is absolutely brilliant, and I want you to kind of share about is like if you are thinking about for realtors or not even real, if you're thinking about selling your home, right? I mean, you came up with something that I think is absolute genius for the realtors, for even the people who are thinking about selling a home, a service that you offer that, it saves time. I can't tell you how many times there's surprises on title and different things like that. So kind of talk about your pre-screening and let's chat about that because I think it's brilliant what you do, but I think it's important we kind of elaborate on that as well.
So I got to thinking about, the way that, things work now. You have a pre-qualified buyer. And in our world, the single worst thing for a title company is having to make that phone call to buyers, sellers, agents, lenders, and let them know, hey, we have a problem that we ran into in the abstract examination period, and we're not going to be able to make closing timely, or maybe it can't be done at all without extra curative work. And it got worse, and you know this, in 2015 when they sort of changed all the timelines with TRID, our window of abstract exam got kind of shaved down. So now it's even more tense, right? We're going to make this phone call a few days before closing. Hey, it's not going to happen kind of thing. And so I just saw that buyers are being pre-qualified. We have in-house title, which is sort of I hate to say it, but a rare thing in our world. You would think a lot of our competitors and title companies out there abstract and examine their properties in-house, but they don't. Matter of fact, we actually do abstract and exam for a number of our competitors.
So let's talk about that because I think it's important our listeners understand that, right? Because that is something that that y'all do that is genius. And what he means by that is when he says in-house, he don't have to hire somebody to go find out about that property,
correct,
right, or anything like that.
Yeah, we have in-house abstractors, and that speeds us up typically, as well as sort of saves costs because we're not paying an outside party to do the examination of that property. So we're running the names in-house, we're dealing with the problems, and so we're able to get on the curative issues quicker and handle them in-house with our abstract and examination attorneys. And we have some of the best. I mean, we have 3 people individually that are attorneys that are just wonderful, but even our abstractors. I mean, one of them used to own an abstracting company and has abstracted properties for years for oil and gas. I mean, really complex stuff. So we have a great team. We're able to do it in-house, find these things early before you have a buyer, right, so that there's no issue once you're under contract. And that was really the game. Is like, look, we're even going to do this for selling, or rather listing agents, for free because we want you to come back and recommend us for the closing. But what we're trying to do is give you something of value so you don't run into any issues when you're past inspection, right? Because that's really where we were kind of running into a problem. You know, you pass inspection, buyer can't really back out for any reason, sellers not much either, and all of a sudden, boom, we hit this defect. People are already packing
money
up.
Spent, yeah, right.
Yeah, they're mentally moved, and now we're telling you it may not happen. So we find it now before you even have a buyer, we can clear that stuff up. without being rushed. We can do it right, and we can do it without having to worry about screwing up a deal. Yeah.
Yep, that's awesome. So, what I think is just when it's those type of services, especially like you're saying in-house, it just really it pushes everything so much quicker, and I think that's the difference because in our business, Jeff, speed equals trust.
Yep.
Right, and I think that's something that you guys afford us to be able to do that helps folks get and you could be fast, but you want it to be right also, and I think that's the name of the game.
I hope the listing agents and the sellers see that the reason we're doing it for free and trying to bring that value to you is we want you to recommend that the closing come back to us because typically the buyer gets to pick unless the seller's
right.
paying the cost, right? But what the sale, the pitch to them is like, look, this title's already been run. It's already clear. This is not something that's going to have to be redone at the next place. Like, we're ready to go right now. So you handling your inspections, get your financing lined up, right? We're good to go.
Yeah.
Like, we're not gonna throw a wrench in this thing last second because nobody really wants to think about what we do, right? We're the last guy in the line, and we don't want to be the ones, derailing the train.
Yeah, and and your business, my business, and for the realtors out there, we understand, and it's important. And no matter whether it's a $2 million transaction, $500,000, or 50,000, to that person, it's the most important thing in the world, right? And I try to explain, the reason why we have Florida Law and Title, is it's so important because it's not like going to the grocery store and little Johnny wants the blue gumball, so he puts the dime or the quarter in the machine, and the red one comes out. And then you give him another quarter, and then the yellow, and you keep going. I mean, we got to get this right because it is a big thing, and especially in today's market, there's usually it's not just a single transaction. There's multiple transactions going on, right? And so it's so important to get that right because of the timing, and it could affect certain things. So, that's why,
There's enough that can go wrong already.
Right. So, again, realtors, if you're out there and you're thinking about listing your house, Florida Law and Title, these guys are the absolute best. You want them, I can promise you, they'll get ahead of the time. They'll make sure that they can do the pre-screen and get that done. Give them the website, Jeff.
It's fdllawandtitle.com or fdltitle.com. That's our old domain that still links to that page. But we also will provide that listing agent with sort of a certificate of the pre-screen, so there's something they can actually add into the MLS on their listing to kind of show that this work has been done. And again, I mean, we have a team of people that sit there, and that's all they do every day. They're not off doing personal injury law. They're not, doing any kind of Supreme Court appeals, type work. They're in the court records. They're abstracting and examining property and fixing defects all day, every day. It's what they love and what they're good at, and so that's why we're trying to offer this service.
In Gumbo Nation, that's why you can see why so many people, y'all come over here. This is why. This is the team that we've got put together because, again, this is not some hodgepodge operation, right? This is something where they have professionals being experts in their area getting that done, right? It's not, hey, you walk in one day, the person at the bank's a teller, the next day they're handling your mortgage. That's not how we operate over here. So on the other side of the break, we've got questions. If you've got any questions, get them in. Get them into info@mortgagegumbo.com. The legend of Law and Title, Jeff Leicestershire with Florida Law and Title, is in studio. Go check out his website, fdlawandtitle.com. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio, 504-260-0995.
It's weird. Are you moving the mic? Are you clipping it or something?
No, it's just hold on. All right.
Like it was good going out, but it started to crackle a bit.
I know. I don't get it. So I just switched the wire, and maybe this one will be better. Who knows, man? You could use something.
Well, I wonder if Parker might have been right because I didn't think about it, but sometimes the actual port itself where you plug it in, if you got some compressed air, like you pour a keyboard, just shoot it in there. There might be some buildup in there.
All right. Well, I'll try to.
I mean, not now.
I know. I'll blow on it later. You know what I'm saying? All right, this should be. I changed out a wire, so hopefully we should be a little bit better now.
Yeah, now you're clear.
Yeah, because I could hear it. All of a sudden, I would just go blank. But you could hear Jeff good and all that, right?
Yeah, no, he was fine. 2 minutes.
Yep. What is up, Gumbo Nation? Check out my boy Jeff Leicester in studio, bringing it today. Two of the hottest dudes in real estate looking at you right here on a Saturday morning, right? Get those calendar requests in, right? Well, you know.
Like George Costanza on Seinfeld, have to get me a maroon velvet sofa.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, good stuff.
When did y'all's season actually start, by the way?
They had their first scrimmage on Thursday. The Jamboree's this Friday.
Yeah, who they playing?
It's at Slidell, I think North Shore, and then the first home game is Fontainebleau. So they kind of start off with their big crosstown rival. Man. Yeah. So, and so.
Exciting times.
Yeah, man.
Fly by.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like yesterday, man. I remember just being like glad he dressed out and excited when he made the kickoff team.
And now you got to watch.
And now it's like, and that's why I quit. Well, and that's the thing. Now he's playing free safety, so it's like, you know,
don't let him behind you.
That's what I told him. Like, dude, no matter what, you know what I'm saying? Like at all costs.
Yeah.
You know. And I'm like, I know you want to make the gigantic hit, but at the same time,
can't pull a. What is that? Was it Lattimore for the Saints?
Yeah. No, Williams.
Yeah, Marcus Williams. Yeah, my 12-year-old's kind of a late bloomer. He's got his first practice today.
Nice.
Missing it. So.
Yeah.
I was like, well, your mom can sit through it. She's already texted me. She's like, this sport isn't gonna fly.
Welcome back. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio. If you want to join the show, 504-260-0995. Hey, you can shoot us a chat if you're hanging out with us. Got quite a few people hanging out with us on social media. Or you can shoot an email to info@mortgagegumbo.com. Jeff Leicester in studio, owner, legend of law and title. Part of the Total Home Authority, so we've got some questions that we're going to get to in a little bit with him. If you want to check him out, fdllawandtitle.com. Multitude of services. Jeff helps out not just on the title side, but, you know, the law part of the law and title. Let's talk about that. How, I mean, gosh, you've helped. I sent over somebody this week, somebody looking to start a business. Kind of, let's talk about just really, in the previous block, you were talking about how title handles title. Let's talk about just some of those other services for that person listening going, hey, look, I own a home. I don't need title. But the one thing about South Louisiana, look, if, you know, no Fortune 500 companies here. So everybody kind of wants to be their own business owner, right? So kind of with some guidance there, kind of tell us about the services you bring with that.
Yeah, so it does cross over a good bit as well. But no, we've handled, I mean, any walk of life there. So regular startup, you know, I want to form an LLC. I'm an 18-year-old kid. I got a grass cutting business, or I've got a business selling things on Facebook, or the one I just did recently was a girl taking over a veterinarian office. Now that had everything tied into it. You know, it was, you know, purchase of stock and land and, you know, other things like that. But, you know, we've done that ourselves. So I have a number of companies. You know, we've dealt with, all right, what if we want to layer these things out for liability reasons, or we just want to start a company that's going to be a holding company for maybe a condo that we're going to buy with some friends, and we need to have an operating agreement, and we need to stipulate, well, if one wants to get bought out or wants to leave, if there's a divorce, what are the things that's going to happen here, who's going to vote and how. So there's a lot of complexity. It's not just, I mean, anybody can go on the Secretary of State and form an LLC, and maybe then go to irs.gov and get an EIN number or tax ID. But there's a lot of other issues that flow from there, and you want to make sure you're set up right so that there's not a breach of the corporate veil. That's the whole purpose, right? You want that liability separation, and if you don't do it right or don't operate it right, then it can be all for nothing.
Well, and I think, as a guy who's been in business and been in business with some friends, and that's always like, don't do, and luckily we didn't lose friendships and stuff like that. But I think it's important that people understand what you're saying there, because everybody's excited day one when they're talking about this business.
Sure.
And how great it's going to be.
Yep.
And this is going to be awesome. But if you're a true business and your aspirations are, to grow and to become the next Amazon or whoever it is, right? And even if it's not, even if it's a partnership,
sure,
right? I think people just have to understand that sometimes life happens. Maybe a partner's got to get out.
Yep.
Right? Having to make sure that's I'm watching somebody right now who things aren't set up right. The guy has a business, and that's who I kind of refer. Had a business, friend bought it from him because he was having some financial troubles, but said, hey, when I want to come back in, they agreed, hey, yeah, you can come back in at this percentage. Nothing was in writing, and so guess what?
That's right. Yeah, and look, I mean, I hate to be the doom and gloom guy, but 50% of the marriages in this country are going to end in divorce. So you start a company, even if it's something just you and your fishing buddy had on the side, but you start it while you're married. Well, I mean, that's a community asset. It's a community property issue. So you've got to get things, handled if there's just simply a divorce, or if you're just getting bought out, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of people, oh, well, I just sold my company or whatever. You didn't have your spouse sign off on it, so what about her half, or his half, whatever the case may be. And we went through this personally ourselves.
So Louisiana on businesses does follow the same as residential community property?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So unless you have a community property, agreement, a prenup on the front end that stipulates otherwise, I mean, you've got an asset that was created during the existence of the marriage and is presumed to be community. And again, I was going to say, we just sort of went through this on the nice side of it, at least recently. So Stephen Shearer, who's our lead abstract examination attorney, has been with me the longest since I've opened the company, is now a partner in Florida Law and Title. And so, we have an operating agreement that stipulates, this is what's going to happen if somebody goes bankrupt or gets convicted of a federal crime or dies or gets incapacitated, and we're working through the process right now with, insurance in order to purchase insurance so that if something does happen to me, that insurance pays out and he can buy out my spouse. I mean, he doesn't want to be in business with Martha, and she really can't. She's not an attorney.
Right.
So it gives them the ability to basically buy out the interest at maybe an agreed upon price, that the insurance pays out. And then, the company will be his, or vice versa if something happens to him. Yeah.
So in a situation like that, is that really mainly, let's say if it's an individual, is it as important as once you start getting into like partnerships or more than one person? What do you kind of?
Yeah, I mean, operating agreements are something that if it's a single member entity, you maybe not need, or if it's a married couple, maybe not need it there too. But if there's more than one person and that person's not your spouse, right? Like you need to have some sort of operating agreement, kind of, even if it's just pretty vanilla. If you don't have it, the members or the heirs, I guess, of your partner, when they come in, they may come in with ownership, but they don't come in with voting rights, right? So not to say that your partner is going to take advantage of your heirs, but they don't have any control or say so. So that's why the buy sell is sort of a nice add on with the insurance proceeds, because everybody kind of gets what they want. Your heirs, your family, they get money and get paid out of the deal. Your remaining partner gets the company, and that usually works out pretty smooth.
So people have to understand it's not like when you go to the casino and you're with three dudes and everybody cows up $100.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, and we'll split it three ways.
We see that, but we need to do something to help you out.
And I think that is very smart when it starts coming to that. So that's on the business side. Let's talk of some of the other entities. Let's talk a little bit about estate planning, wills, and I've got several, and we'll get to that on the other side. But kind of introduce the offering of that and just the importance, especially in the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, so we do a lot of last will and testaments and trusts, with the firm. The will in Louisiana, there's a statutory, basic plan lays out of how your assets are going to going to be transferred to your heirs at your death unless you have a will. So unless you're fine with your half, in a general scenario, it's a husband and wife, and you got a couple of kids, half of the estate, let's say that the husband passes away, his stuff is going to go to the children, and there's going to be a usufruct over that half that's in favor of the surviving spouse. But, what's not factored in there is these children might be under the age of 18. So if it's just a house, you're not going to have a situation where somebody can help you mortgage it if you need to refinance or sell it if you need to sell the house and move away. You're going to have to go do a separate proceeding, separate from the succession, to get the authority for the wife to sign on behalf of those kids possibly. There's forced heirship in Louisiana, so kids under the age of 24 have to be given a portion of the estate. What we tend to see
is that the minor's mortgage?
Well, the minor's mortgage is anybody under 18.
18, right.
But if you're under 24 and you have just one kid, then 25% of your estate has to go to that child. 2 kids or more, it has to be 50%. So if I have just $200,000 in cash, my wife and I, right, it's $100 me and $100 her, and I pass away with 2 children or more, $50,000 of my $100,000, right, has to go to them. Now that can be satisfied by a number of different means, but you've got to make sure you set up a situation to do that. So what we would normally do is create a trust that comes into existence at the date of death. The surviving spouse, typically the mother, is going to be the trustee over that trust. So now she gets to wear 2 hats. She owns that $100,000 outright on her own, right? She's got usufruct over the other $100,000, but it also probably goes into a trust for the benefit of the kids, and she's the trustee. So she gets to kind of control, which is most often what people want. I want everything to my spouse and then to my kids equally, maybe. If I have forced heirs, then it has to go in a trust, but I want my spouse to be in control. There's a number of scenarios. So, we've talked about this a lot with the holographic will.
Yeah.
And that's something we try to push for people to do now until they can come in to see us.
Yeah.
And we had that situation just last night. I had a buddy of mine call.
Yeah, talk about that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, so, an holographic will, there's only 2 types of wills in Louisiana. The one you would do through an attorney, right, or the one that's called holographic, which is, the testator themselves handwriting their own will. And there's 3 rules: handwritten, signed, dated. A lot of people will try to overdo it. They'll have it witnessed or they'll have it typed up. That invalidates the form. So it's really just handwritten, signed, dated. And, you can do a valid will there. You're not going to be able to get real complex, with trusts and all these things. But, it can be a very basic, simple, I want everything to my wife kind of thing.
My wishes are.
Yeah, everything to my wife. Or everything to my kids equally, or everything to my wife, and if she's not here, then to my kids equally. So I tell people it's the will you write before you go into surgery or before you get on a plane.
Yeah,
like that kind of
good
thing,
point, yeah.
until you can come back in and see us. But, the situation I had last night was a guy who, basically hand wrote it on the back of an envelope.
Yeah.
I mean, that's valid. It's handwritten, signed. I think he needed to date it because they sent me a snapshot of the picture. But, this is a fellow that's, in poor health now, and they just wanted kind of a split second, hey, is this going to meet form? It does. And he's also fortunate he's just leaving everything to his children equally. So even if it didn't meet form, what he wants is what's going to happen, without the will. But I'm like, well, does he want anybody to be put in charge? He's got 5 kids. Do we need to name one as the executor of the estate? What if some bill or some asset pops up that y'all weren't thinking about, and they had to transact some business on behalf of the estate? So let's add that little word in there. So I'm going to be texting kind of a rundown. This is what you really should say. 3 or 4 sentences that'll hold you over and do what you need.
Okay. On the other side of the break, I want to ask you about, and I've got some questions here that have to do with wills, and then we'll get into some estate planning also, because, now with the reverse mortgages, we're getting a lot more calls when a reverse mortgage is now paying over 8%. Right, line of credit right now. We're starting to see that, and one of the things I'm noticing as I talk to folks, is making sure that when they're wanting to protect and make sure the roof is over their head, is everything else handled as well. So I want to chat about that, and then I just thought about something too when you were talking about the heirship up to 24 years old. Does that include, like, let's say somebody gets married and they have stepkids? Are those stepkids automatically at 24, or is it true?
No.
I don't want to say true kids.
Yeah, biological, but it can be adopted as well. but it actually can go past 24 also if they're mentally or physically infirm to a certain degree, right? But no, like if I had, passed away and I have stepkids, they're not going to be my forced heir.
Okay.
Right, but they may be of my.
Okay, that was just a question I thought of there. So, so if somebody, because people get remarried and stuff like that. All right, you're listening to Mortgage Gumbo. Jeff Lessashare, legend of Law and Title, is in studio. He's Total Home Authority member. FDL Law and Title Dadcam. That's FDL Law and Title Dadcam. Stick around. We got a lot more for you. Everything legal today. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio. 504-260-0995.
My wife. I'm not putting him in this shit. Talking about football. Like, too late. He's already addicted.
Yeah. Committed.
Man, speaking of football and sports like that too, I was reading a story last night. You saw, who Livy Dunn is?
Yeah, with
Skeens.
yeah.
Bro,
That's awesome,
what
huh?
a power couple.
Yeah, that's strong, dude. Yeah, that is strong. No doubt about it. That is strong.
My daughter lives. Her dorm is across the street from the gymnastics center. And so
Yeah, I heard they got like all kinds of security now, and
yeah, well, he's like hoping he can sit out there and see. Skeens.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Maybe he'll come by.
Yeah. I bet those people can't go anywhere.
Nah, man, it's a blessing and a curse, I guess.
Yep.
I tell it, Gavin laughs because, like sometimes we'll go to Home Depot or something like that, and, and somebody will hear, when I had my truck wrapped, it was different. But like somebody will hear my voice and they'll go like, I know you, and Gavin will go, geez. And I'm like, dude. And so we joke around. He's like, yeah, Dad, you're almost famous. I'm like, yeah. I said, imagine what it's like for
Skeens,
for these international people.
Yeah, Tom Brady.
Your LeBron James, your Tom Brady. I mean, like, dude,
Jordan.
This messy guy.
Yeah, bro.
I mean, wow, huh? I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me.
Did you see that stat on Taylor Swift with the economies?
It's amazing.
So
Sam has a friend who's getting married, or it might be a new customer, who's getting married. His one part he had to handle was the hotel rooms, because wife's from another state coming in. Didn't get back. Two people. Taylor Swift, the same night they're getting married is her concert.
Oh, Lord.
All the rooms are done, and it's 3-night minimum at some of your bigger hotels, $1,500 a night.
Holy
so, dude, that just changed the whole budget, bro. You know what I'm saying? So, so you talk about, affecting, so yeah, I'm like, oh, that poor person. You know what I mean, dude? I feel bad for him. I'm like, oh, you're going to be in trouble already, man. Because that was his response. I'm like, that ain't good, bro. You were supposed to be responsible, man. Not good at all, You
busting them in from an hour out?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's what he was saying. Like, even Metairie, like everything just, so it's crazy.
Insane.
It's crazy, man. Crazy.
1 minute.
All right. What is up, Gumbo Nation? Thanks for hanging out with us today. So is it just tryout? Like, is it a local, or is it like?
It's just like wreck, dude. He's
Right.
like never played tackle football.
That's good though, man.
Yeah, but the coach, my wife just texted me, like, you're supposed to get those coaches that are idiots. He's like, your kid's gonna bleed, maybe a concussion, hopefully no brain damage. He thinks he's being funny. Meanwhile, his mom's like,
Right.
But that's my grandparents dealing with my kids in flag football.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh gosh.
All right, here we go.
Whereas my dad was like, if it ain't broke, it ain't hurt.
yeah, you heard he injured. It's
Yeah.
the famous line from the program.
Yeah. Welcome back. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Steiner right here on iHeartRadio, 504-260-0995. Total Home Authority member Jeff Lessashare, president, owner, legend of Law and Title, Florida Law and Title, Dad Cam in studio. You don't think we're committed? He's in here bringing y'all all this excellent education, and his son's at football right now, and, you know, getting the pep talk, all that kind of stuff. So this is the absolute, because, yeah, I guarantee you he'd rather, you know, hey, I'd rather be with my son doing football, but this is the commitment, Gumbo Nation.
Got to pay the bills.
That's right. This is what we do. So, Jeff, something cool. We talk about you always being a pioneer. Let's talk about service, and for those listening, you brought on some, you know, we're starting to see the importance of, you know, Spanish speaking and how important that is. Let's talk about what you've done there to kind of, again, to be able to offer those services to those folks, you know, so to Spanish-speaking folks.
It kind of came up a little bit accidental in a way. We have a few folks with us, three actually, three ladies that are their first language is Spanish, and they started getting kind of reached out to for, you know, small stuff, powers of attorney, whatever. And as it turns out, you know, unbeknownst to me, there's entire, you know, chambers of commerce, and, you know, there's these, you know, startup radio stations that are really, you know, pushing to the Spanish-speaking community certain services and things like that. And so all of a sudden I'm starting to read and look into it, and I'm seeing these stats that over the next 10 years, you know, 75% of the homes purchased in this country could be Spanish-speaking individuals as a first language. And so we started to offer translation services. Maybe it's just over the phone. Maybe it's sitting down at the actual closing, writing wills now for people that you know, don't speak English but that are, you know, here legally and wanting an American dream like all the rest of us, have their children, need wills and powers of attorney, whatever, what have you, or even in some cases too, having to go back home to, you know, maybe it's Mexico or Honduras or something like that, and needing certain documentation so they can do banking over there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so we do a lot of that now, and yeah, our three girls, ladies, Denise, Yvette, and Alejandra are in Baton Rouge, Lakeview, and Hammond, and I mean, just wonderful people to deal with and very helpful.
That's awesome. Yeah. So again, that's just another service, folks. So if you know somebody, think of Florida Law and Title can help with that. So we've talked about the business services. Let's kind of get into sort of the, you know, people need to understand, you know, your life's work, the importance of it. So we're going to get into, I've got some questions here about wills, but let's talk about the estate planning side of things and why that's so important, right? Because you've got your life's work,
sure,
right? And kind of tell the will is kind of how you want things to go, but let's talk about the estate planning. Is that sort of like, I guess, you start with that, then all the other things come into play, right? Or kind of just in your mind, just tell people why estate planning is important and why y'all offer that service.
Yeah, I mean, there's various levels of client that comes in, and some have, you know, no planning at all, and you know, they don't own a business or anything like that, so it's maybe not complex from the asset side of things, but, you know, we have a lot of, you know, multiple marriages now, and kids from different marriages, mixed families, things like that. So there's a lot to account for there, and, you know, and trying to be fair. That's what I see most with our clients, is there's this real complex discussion going on behind the scenes at home. Is like, you know, who's going to take care of our children if something should happen to us and they, God forbid, you know, be under the age of 18. So assets aside, we'll see people that, hey, I want these people to be our trustees over the assets and finances for our children that are minors. And then I want our tutorship, you know, to be structured like this. So maybe one person is being trusted with the finances and another is the one that's actually taking care of them as the parents in the event that something happens to their, you know, parents, one or both of them. But, you know, we try to do it as a whole outlook, or a holistic, I don't know if holistic is the right word, but, you know, look at the entire scenario of the situation here. You've got to consider yourself as to what you might be getting, maybe from parents that are deceased. Maybe you're inheriting some property. There's a lot of people out here that still have mineral interest or, you know, rights from royalties, things like that. What's your family dynamic going to look like going forward? I mean, your kids are not likely to be here. So, do you really want to leave them in a situation where your 8 children co-own the 100-acre farm that was up in Kentwood? Maybe they do. Maybe it's just one that wants that, and you just need to treat them equally in some other way.
But that's the importance of coming to you and coming to Florida League. Let's have those conversations, right? And is that where trust and stuff like that come into place when you're having that, right? Like you may be having that conversation and where you go, hey, listen, let's put this plot of land in a trust for the, I mean, is that?
Yeah, so there's a number of different trusts.
Right.
That's
true.
We get reached out to for just a typical estate planning type trust. They want to put assets in there, almost like you would do with an LLC for liability separation, and so that you can name some beneficiaries, and going forward, it doesn't have to go through succession, right? And then there's the trust for the forced heirship thing we already talked about. Then there's another type trust that we'll do if you have concerns of Medicaid and liens that the state might get in the event that you have to use Medicaid towards the end of your life, sort of thing. And so there's a number of reasons to do that sort of planning, but we try to also look at it, not just your will, not just your trust, but the simple stuff too, powers of attorney, right?
Great call.
Whether that's medical or financial or both. Disposition of remains is another one we started to do a good bit of. Those are things that you want to take care of maybe on your own now and not leave to maybe your children to have to decide. I mean, who's really wanting to think about those things when they're trying to bury mom or dad kind of deal? And then the living will. And the living will is something that, if you've got, like me, for instance, I have 3 kids. I mean, you're going to have, one that wants to pull the plug on me, one that doesn't, and then one that's got to pick a side. Well, with a living will, I can basically say, hey, look, after you look at these parameters, like I want life support withdrawn from me, and I'm making that decision. I'm not forcing that upon my kids or even my spouse, right? And they don't have to feel guilty about it or feel like they, pulled the plug on dad a day or two early or something. What if he'd have come out of it? No, this is what dad wanted,
right?
Kind of thing. So it's a little bit peace of mind for them as well. So we take care of all those things in one meeting. We talk about all of it. And then, unlike a lot of, places, I think that, and maybe this is to our detriment to some degree, but I've always had the approach my entire career that if you're coming in, unless you're needing a whole revamping, right, of the entire will and trust, if you just got to make some changes, you want to change some executors, you want to change a beneficiary, something like that, we make those changes without even charging the clients.
Right.
So I don't want you to feel like you can't come back, because life, as it goes on, you're going to be in a different circumstance, a different scenario, and I want you to come back, and maybe it's nothing, and maybe I can change the name out, right, and we can re-execute a new will and not have to charge you. But what if there's something that you were hesitant on because you didn't want to get charged again? I want people to feel comfortable to come back in, hey, this is the scenario, because it might be a big deal. It might be something we really have to be concerned with and talk about and work through.
What I think is awesome is that as y'all preparing this stuff for me, is sitting down and having to understand where are all your assets, right? Number one, right? And knowing, listing out, okay, hey, I've got a few bucks at this bank, and because there's a lot of pain at death, and everybody's mind, so for me to be selfish enough to think that everybody's going to know, let's ease that burden, right? And being able to list out not just what the wishes are, but where those assets are.
Look, man, and the horror stories are horrible. I mean, when I think back to successions that, I've had one that took years to get through. And the fight was over like a piece of furniture that was probably worth like $200.
Yeah.
Maybe it was sentimental, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah.
But you weren't even having like children fight over it. It was like grandkids and great grandkids in some degree. So like a will would have been very nice that, all movables or this particular item, if it is sentimental, if it was an antique or whatever, goes here or there. It's always the little stuff that people are going to fight over. The big stuff they tend to find a way to work through. But yeah, it's amazing what I always joke with people when they sit down for wills. I tell them, like, when you say your kids are all going to get along, it's all going to be fine. And I ask them, I'm like, do you recall when they were little and you left the living room to go get something to drink in the kitchen and they'd go to fighting?
That's a good point, man.
It's going to be the same thing when you leave this world.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody loves each other, so there's a dollar
well,
involved.
They're not fighting with each other.
No.
What I find is that you've got, say, a brother and a sister that are fighting because of the spouse in their ear saying you're not getting yours, right?
Absolutely.
Or you're trying to, get something or gain something for your child, the grandchild in the scenario, right? And so you supporting or defending your child is reason enough to maybe fight with your sibling. usually they're going to get along basic, but there's always one road kid too. So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff. Jeff Lesashare, Fleur de Lis Law and Title, FDL Law and Title, Dad Cam, Total Home Authority member, the legend of Law and Title, fantastic. We're talking about estate planning, wills. We've got several questions that he's going to be answering on the other side of the break. If you've got a question, get them in. We've got one segment left, info@mortgagegumbo.com. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio. 504-260-0995. There you go, David.
I got what's going on right now. People have been fighting 3 years over bolo ties. Just like,
jeez,
the whole collection is like worth $120.
I know, man. That's crazy. Well, we've got one that just called me, and they think, well, we're not sure if this has been done or that's been done, and we just started chatting, and I told them, look, can you send something over? I said, Fleur de Lis will review it to make sure what we've got to do, and sure enough, come to find out, there's a son of one of the kids who's in jail and not wanting to sign. Not wanting to sign. I mean, I guess, what's he have to lose?
That's right. It's like the only entertainment he has is to stick it to everybody else.
Yeah, and he's like, you know what? I guess, hey, if you didn't come to my hearing or you didn't support me, right? Like, here's where we're at now.
This is that one that I had last night. It was like really? Like, not even a piece of loose leaf?
Yeah.
Like, just an envelope, that's all you had?
Yeah. So something like that, do they just need to show that to you and you put it in a record or something like that?
Yeah, so we'll actually submit that to the court as an affidavit along with the rest of the succession documents. So, on that case, we'll probably make a copy. They have to have the original, but we'll have a copy just so it doesn't get slide out. It's going to be hard to kind of bunch that together and file it. But yeah, that gets submitted into the court. The original will stay there for eternity.
So the actual envelope goes to the...
1 minute.
Goes to the courthouse. Yeah.
Wow.
So, 100 years from now, your great-great-grandkids can roll up in there and see Dwayne Stein's actual will.
Yeah.
It's there.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
My dad didn't leave any sort of will, and me and my brother had to, wade through so much stuff. But it was funny. My brother and I get along perfectly fine. And then it turned out our succession lawyer ended up pissing us both off.
Right.
Even closer. Because he kept going, are you sure your father doesn't have any other children? And my brother busts up. He goes, dude, if you ask if my dad stepped out on my mom one more time, I'm coming over the table.
Right.
I'm just
right.
laughing.
Like it's...
Man,
yeah.
Let me tell you, though, that whole,
23andMe
and stuff, it's happening.
It's real.
Dude. It is happening. Yeah. And they actually warn you when you submit that stuff. Like, be careful.
Yeah.
All right, 10 seconds.
All right. Make sure you give me the 2-minute warning, brother.
Roger. No sleep till.
Welcome back. You're listening to Mortgage Gumbo with Dwayne Stein right here on iHeartRadio. Joining me live in studio this week, Total Home Authority member. That's what Mortgage Gumbo. Gumbo Nation, that's what we do. Anything related to your house or legal questions, anything like that, insurance, you name it, realtor, we have it for you. Joining me is the legend of Law and Title, Jeff Lesashare with Fleur de Lis Law and Title. That's FDL Law and Title.com. All right, so let me start off with this question because we got a couple questions. So here's an easy one. What is an executor of a will and what is their purpose?
Yeah. So when you write a will, you're going to name an executor. There's sort of two types, in my opinion. You've got just your general executor. That's going to be the person that submits the will to the succession attorney and kind of takes the lead, right?
Okay.
To transact business on behalf of the estate. And you can also give them the name as the independent executor. That one word makes a huge bit of difference. So a regular executor, every time you need to do some work on behalf of the estate, sell a piece of property, let's say, for instance, you're going to have to petition the court, get authority from the court, and then go take the action. If you name someone your independent executor, the court, when you file the succession, will issue letters of independent administration or independent executorship, and then those letters are basically your authority to do whatever you need to do after that.
Okay.
Right? Now you have a fiduciary responsibility to the estate, and so consequently the heir is there too. But you're not having to go ask the judge every time you want to do something. Right, if you want to liquidate some stock or sell
But an executor does have to still go according to the will. They can't sign on behalf of anything without
correct. And that's a good point. You bring up something that also happened within the last couple of weeks. We had an executor who was, in our opinion, not doing what they necessarily should be doing with the funds, weren't following the will, and so we had to cut off representation there because they weren't following our advice and in my opinion what the testator wanted in their will. That is a really rare scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, in 20 years I can think of maybe 2 times that I've had an executor do that. But typically, they're sort of in charge along with the attorney to make sure that whatever the testator put in their will comes to fruition, right? That's what we're there for.
All right. So the other question I got is, all right, my siblings and I, there's 3 of them, okay? And they had a car. One of the siblings said their wish was, and it's a conversation I had a couple weeks ago, that the wish of their mom, it's 2 biological, as you said earlier, in 1 step. Well, the stepson stated that it was their wish. It's not in the will for him to get the car, but it was her wish for him to have the car.
Yeah.
If there's nothing on what is, I mean,
it's like it doesn't exist. I mean, so they're all going to come into co-ownership in theory. Let's assume that. I mean, I don't know the exact scenario of the step or whatever, but they're all going to co-own, and if everybody agrees, then yeah, you can get that car to that one individual, and you may not even have to go through a full-blown succession if it's the only asset or if it's the only one you're taking care of right now. Most of your auto title DMV type outfits with notaries there can do an affidavit to get title transferred to a vehicle. Again, you need everybody's cooperation, but you can save some time and money by going that route. There's a similar scenario for cash in a bank account if it's less than $20,000. There's a similar type affidavit. So those are like the easiest, most simple scenarios. And then you have what they call a small succession. If there's no will and the property is worth less than $125,000, the property being the 1/2 of the deceased, married couple or whatever, if it's an individual, $125,000 or below, and then anything there's a will on or it's worth more than $125 is your full-blown succession that most people are used to, that's been around for hundreds of years in that scenario. So those are the kind of levels, I guess.
So let me ask you this. So it may have been their wishes, but if the title's still in the deceased name, how does that get changed into...
I mean, essentially, the basic answer is that they're going to have to do some sort of affidavit of death, domicile, and heirship or something similar to that, right, with the DMV, which is going to sort of say the children are the ones getting it, so to speak, from the estate, and then those children will then donate or sell their interest to that one child.
But these other 2 would have to agree
They'll
to
have
say
to cooperate,
they can't just go to the DMV and go, hey, it was their wishes.
Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, it's kind of weird, right? All right. So when you're looking at people have life insurance, people have IRAs, but they come to you and they have a will as well. What if I have a beneficiary on, let's say, a life insurance policy, right, or one of my 401k, and yet I have a will that says all my assets are to be divided equally amongst, I just have one son, but let's say it's 6 people.
Sure.
Does that beneficiary listed on that IRA, does that trump the will of when people say, hey, I want all assets divided? So let's say, hey, they got $160,000 if you include, say, a $30K in an IRA. That they want divided equally, but that IRA, hey, that it happened to go, maybe it's the tough love. We find out they loved one person more than the other 5, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if that one person is listed as the beneficiary, but the will stating everything divided equally, who wins there?
Now, the beneficiary form is going to control, and so the easiest way to think of it with regard to life insurance is that you may own the policy while you're alive, right? but the proceeds that flow from the policy when you die, they're not in existence yet. They don't come up until the occurrence happens, which is your death. So you could never.
And I guess that same thing on a 401k too, right?
Well, 401k a little bit different because you put money in there, right? But
Right.
on the insurance, it doesn't come into existence until you die, so you could never have owned it. So that's why the beneficiary form, and it controls. It's going to, I tell you, a dangerous scenario you see case law on is husband and wife. Husband names the wife the beneficiary, then they get divorced. He remarries, and never changes the form. First wife is going to get that money. Yeah, you got to be on top of it, and we will name the trust, like for the forced heirship deal, the contingent. So maybe your life insurance goes to the wife. If she's not here, then it will go to the trust the same way the stuff in the will does.
Right.
But yeah,
so like I might have my mom and dad, and then Gavin's a contingent, or vice versa, because he's so young.
That's right.
All right. So let me ask you this: on the 401k, or just say it's a bank account, right? Like, what happens there? Does that still same thing comes out of those? If they're named beneficiary, right? I've got a 401k.
Yeah.
Sue's named beneficiary.
Anything with a beneficiary gets paid directly to the beneficiary. Everything else gets lumped into the estate.
Whatever is left is divided out by the
according to the will.
Right, right. And then that person, let's say there's 6 in this scenario. Even though one of those people are getting that person still gets 1/6 of whatever's left.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because they can end up with more. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Jeff, you are the man, bro. Thanks. These questions are amazing, folks. Listen. He's a resource. He's a valuable asset in our community. Fleur de Lis Law and Title, best in the business. That's why we use him. He saves people every single day. If you want to find out more about his services, go to fhlawandtitle.com. fhlawandtitle.com. Figure it's easier to do that than to sit here and give you the phone number. Jeff, always a pleasure, bro.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.
Yep.
Covered some great stuff. Good luck on your boy with football, man.
You too.
So, and hey, we got to start talking about football eventually around here. It is football season. So, with that being said, Gumbo Nation, stay warm out there. Next week, insurance, Total Home Authority member Colette Biedenkoff with TWFG will be in studio.
10.
Till next week, Gumbo Nation. Keep stirring the pot.